Hi, kids! Welcome to the Gastropod Show. Today, we're having a snail adventure. Snails are one of the easiest animals to spot. You could find them almost anywhere, especially when it's been raining. Now, let's take a look at these two little guys. This is Barry. Barry is a polished muffin, also known as a bayuku. Barry is the largest land snail in the Philippines and can only be found in our forests. Our next little friend is called Big Boss. Big Boss is an African giant land snail and comes all the way from Africa. Big Boss is also the most common snail that you would find in your gardens. Now, a word of caution, kids. When you see Big Boss or his other friends in the garden, please do not pick them up. And the reason for that is they may have harmful parasites or bugs that could be bad for you. Now let's take a look at the physical characteristics of these snails. Snails have long bodies, but no legs. They move by using a big muscle on the bottom of their belly called a foot. Snails tighten or contract their muscles in order to be able to move around. So kids, have you noticed anything different between Big Boss and Barry? Let's discuss this further. Most snails have a round shell that gets bigger as they grow up. Snails carry their shells with them wherever they go, and can even hide inside their shells when they need to get away from other animals that might want to eat them. Snails have 4 tentacles. The short 2 at the bottom are for feeling, tasting, and smelling. The longer 2 have eyes on the end of them. But snails actually can't see very well. They just see light and dark. Snails also cannot hear sound, and so they move around their environment by feeling and smelling their way. They are covered in a special slime called mucus, which is a lot like the boogers in your nose. Now, this mucus helps the snails to stay wet and avoid drying out. They can also use this mucus to stick to things. They use it to climb up walls, on tree trunks, or up big rocks. Now let's take a look at Big Boss. Do you notice anything different? You guessed it. It's his shell. Big Boss's shell is more cone-shaped as compared to Barry's, which is much more circular in shape. You'll also notice that Big Boss's skin is much darker than that of Barry's lighter colored skin. Both Big Boss and Barry are just 2 of the many different species of snails. You have land snails, seawater snails, as well as freshwater snails. There are just so many of them. Snails are nocturnal creatures, which means that they are only active at night and are usually asleep during the daytime. Which is why we're shooting this video at night. Now let's take a look at some of the snails that we have on our little snail farm. Snails may move slow, but they're also great escape artists. Which is why we cover the boxes that they live in so that they can't escape. Let's take a look at our very first snail box and see what we can find. Wow! Now those are a lot of snails. Can you guys guess what type of snail these are? Correct! They're African giant land snails, just like Big Boss. Snails are herbivores, which means they only eat plants. Snails love to eat vegetables and fruits such as apples, watermelon, cucumbers, and carrots, even avocados. Now remember what I said earlier about snails being great escape artists? Well, here's one little guy that's trying to make a break for it. So let's gently pick him up and put him back with his friends. You may be wondering how snails eat. Well, just like us, they have a mouth and teeth. But they have way more teeth than we have. They actually have 14,700 pairs of teeth. And the way that snails eat their food is unlike humans that chew their food, they scrape the food that they eat with all those 14,700 teeth. Let's move along, shall we? What do we have here? Why, it's Barry and his friends. Do you remember what type of snail Barry is? Correct. He is a polished muffin snail, otherwise known as bayuco locally. Now, this type of snail can only be found in the Philippines, and they live in forests, and you won't see them in your garden anytime soon. Like all other snails, these guys are nocturnal and usually don't come out during the day but are very active at night. They are also extremely shy and are very sensitive. So don't be surprised if you come across one that they would immediately hide back into their shells. Let's take a look at this next box. This is known as our breeding box. This is where we keep the mommy and the daddy snails so that they can make more baby snails. Did you know that snails can have as few as 9 eggs up to 100 eggs? Now that's a lot of baby snails. Baby snails look exactly like their parents. They are born with a shell. And the only difference is they are way smaller than their mommies and daddies, and they are also lighter in color. These will all change as they grow. What I'm showing you now is a baby snail hatching box. This is where we keep the eggs and allow them to hatch on their own. They usually hatch 6 days after their mommies have laid them. And lastly, let me show you some of our snails that we have been able to hatch and are now about 2 months old. So you can say that these guys are in grade 2, just like you. Soon, they'll grow to be as big as their parents, and we're very excited to see that happen. Thank you for your time, kids, and I hope you enjoyed the show. Bye!